Do you want to know what's going round? See what's the talk of the town on Real Talk on the radio today.
And welcome to Real Talk Radio 97.5 FM. This is live from Northport. I'm actually in Northport now, not Indiana. I'm flying back on Friday. I will be at the Heron Creek Northport Forward event this evening at 6 o'clock. That is a closed session because it's a gated community. So that's really meant for the Heron Creek community specific. But I will be there filming live. So join us at 6 o'clock and you'll be able to join right in and get the update and watch the Q&A and really get some good involvement. I'll also be at the Candidate Forum tomorrow night, and then Bobcat Blitz on Wednesday night at 6, and then Northport Forward again on Thursday night at 6, and then my show on Friday, and then I will be flapping my wings to take myself back to Indiana to get my truck and to be with my granddaughters and hopefully help my son move in to his new house. Hopefully we'll get some word on that soon. But that's the update from the Rawlings / Real Talk Radio side of things. And I wanted to also send a special thanks out to Remax Palm Realty for sponsoring our tower for the emergency broadcasting capabilities for the citizens of Northport, as we at 97.5 are so proud to be part of the emergency broadcasting network for the citizens of Northport through the city. So it's going to be really cool. Really cool to have the capabilities I hope we never have to use. Hurricanes are fashionable these days, but I don't like them to be as fashionable as they are. The other thing that I would tell you is a quick update from the radio station is we are moving our location to Toledo Blade or at the Bobcat Commons. We've signed the contract. So we're going to be over in that area. That's going to happen really, really soon. We're super excited about it. And we're going to be the only true to form, the only radio station in the city of Northport. And we're just super proud of that and super happy and super excited at the station.
And John, what will happen with Common Grounds? Will that stay?
So Common Grounds, as of right now, Common Grounds is actually going to shut down. So we're looking at some different platforms, different ideas, different concepts. I've still got to meet with some people that I have some ideas with, but they always shut down Common Grounds in the summertime anyway. So we're trying to maybe rejuvenate that concept again, but it was more valuable for us to stay as a radio station, a viable station, but also get creative on some of the things that we're going to do. We're actually going to have a live podcasting room set up for citizens of Northport to be able to come in, use our podcasting room, set their own things up, but have the capability of recording and getting the content out with professional equipment. So we're looking to do that. We're looking to really engage with the community a little different, but it's going to be a lot of fun. And then hopefully, and I know Bud's working on some ideas, RJ's working on some ideas. We want to open Common Grounds back up, but it will definitely be a different way, a different location. We are in need for some updating and some changes, and that just goes, and like anything else, even the ULDC needs changes. So you know what, the station, just like the ULDC, has got to go through some changes and some adjustments, and those are all the things that we're doing at the station. So thank you for allowing me to update, and we may have a comment already. So, and Robin, wow, that looks nice and comfortable. Well, that's it. Believe it or not, it's my living room, Robin. So
and we're not often together.
Hardly ever. I've had Pete over a couple times. I've had a couple people over, and this kind of worked out this way. I didn't have to send the link out. It was a little different. And then, just all of the travel that I've been doing, it was easier to do this way. And and get it all set up. So
Yeah.
I arrived today, and my arms are tired. Nothing like an hour delay at the radio or at the airport in Indianapolis. So it was all good. So
All good.
what's happening with the inner workings of Northport at the city? Can you give us a quick update?
Well, this is August.
Yeah.
So supposedly
Yeah.
we, the commission, is on vacation. What that really means is we don't have any regular meetings or any commission meetings, although we did have one last week to finish up some loose ends. Last week. Wow.
It's crazy, huh?
It's crazy. We're almost to the middle of August.
The
It's
year
hard
has
to
kind of
believe.
flown.
It has flown. It's frightening.
It is frightening. We've got
Yeah.
elections coming up. We've got all kinds of things happening, but
Yeah.
we had the second reading of the ULDC. And
Yeah.
how do you feel about the ULDC overall?
Whew. That's how
Yeah.
I feel about it.
Good, bad, or ugly, though?
Well, good. I think our ULDC was a mess. It was just one hot mess. We had been making quick and random changes to it. We had, I don't know, it was created before my time, like 60 chapters or something. We have had historically, well, if there's one area in which I think the city could do better, it's in the permitting area. And we have great people in permitting, but what would happen a lot of times, our ULDC was so large and so convoluted, and one section would say one thing and another section of the ULDC would address that same issue, but the resolution was different, and citizens of the city would get caught on that. You know, a inspector would come out and then tell them one thing, and then another inspector would come out and sort of undo that. And so I think the cleanup of the ULDC, the simplification of it, I mean, it's still a binder, make no mistake. We're not talking a one-page summary. It's a binder, but it's 6 chapters and a definitions section. The chapters are very comprehensive, and everything involved with signs is in one area, with zoning is in another area. Do I think it's done? No, I don't think it's done. A ULDC has to be able to change along with the times. You know, conditions change. What's happening in the marketplace changes. The demographics of the community changes. And so our ULDC has to be able to evolve along with the community. So we haven't heard the end of the ULDC, but I think we're in a really, really good place in terms of now having a lot of clarity in the process. The other thing that's happening with permitting is that we are about to implement Acela, which is a very comprehensive software package that essentially automates all things permitting. So number one, that will speed us up.
Mm-hmm.
It will eliminate errors, things that happen manually. It's a known fact when you have a manual process, you know, we're only human, mistakes are made. But when you have a software package that's based on good tested rules, then you get that kind of consistency that the residents and businesses in this city expect.
Awesome.
And deserve. So we'll start testing that in a week or two. I mean, that is about to happen.
Yep.
And that project has been going on for over a year.
Well, we've had this, the old ULDC was 10 years, right? About 10 years.
Yeah.
So was that, and I'm going to ask this because one, it was difficult to go back and address.
Right.
But with this new structure, is there, as far as like the commissioners are concerned, is there a goal to at least go back and look at some issues as it develops, or is that where the citizens come in and kind of address these and bring it up, and then you go back in to adjust it?
Both.
Both?
I would say, John, I've gone through that ULDC 4 or 5 times now, sort of back to back, and something will pop out at me that I really didn't see fully the third time through or the fourth time through. So whenever the city does something as big and comprehensive and impactful as the ULDC, there are bound to be some unintended consequences in some areas. So we'll really be looking to the community. If things start happening, do call me. I tend to be a moving target. Let me give you my cell phone. It's always best to reach out to me on cell phone, 941-302-1923. I don't tend to hang around in my office. I tend to be out in the community. So that's the best way to catch me.
And text too?
Text, same. Yeah, text, excellent.
Yeah.
Text.
Awesome.
So, so I expect that we'll continue to evolve. I mean, even in the process of discussing the ULDC, we made a lot of changes as we went through the public workshops and the readings, community members, and we really appreciated. We had some really thoughtful, well-researched input to the ULDC, and it resulted in some major changes. So, for example, we definitely have expanded the footprint of our activity centers out east in the Yorkshire area. I never know what the numbers are, but we expanded the Shires or the Yorkshire Activity Center, and then we added an Activity Center 10. And the reason for that is those areas are adjacent to where the new interchange on 75 is going to be in Northport. Also, it's that part of the city that isn't as developed with single family homes. But a number of residents came to us and identified that there were indeed a couple of neighborhoods where development had already happened. There were a number of houses there, and we were able to carve out those areas and not include them in the activity center. So there were a bunch of things. One of the other things that I had noticed, but also came from members of the community, there was an item in there that said, we're rezoning boulevards, and make sure I come back to that. We're rezoning the boulevards to what I call soft commercial. And there was a comment in there that said that commercial development could extend a half a mile or a mile and a half in either direction. And so when I went home, because I live 3 properties off a boulevard, so I'm immediately impacted by that, I kind of walked in one direction and then the other. I tried driving my car, but I only get mile increments. And so it was maybe from San Mateo to the other side, maybe a quarter mile if you really stretched it before you hit a drainage ditch that's full of water year round. And on my side of San Mateo, you went not quite a half mile, maybe close to a half mile before you hit another drainage ditch. So I said to staff, that's wiping out an entire neighborhood. I don't think that was the intention. Yeah. So we got rid of that. We scaled all of that back. It's sort of the processes that the properties that abut those boulevards. So when we did the rezoning, what was the thought process behind it? It was really twofold. Let's look at our activity centers and see if we have an opportunity to expand those. And we did do that. We have a new activity center off River Road near Welland Park, and the one that I mentioned out in the Yorkshire area. And then we took a look at our major collector roads. So any road that is a boulevard, San Mateo Boulevard, which I live off of, someday is going to be 4 or 5 lane road. Those are the
It's
facts.
coming.
They were designed, and you look at the roads, there's plenty of easement on both sides. And people have to remember that we're going to be 250,000, give or take 10 or 20,000 at build out. We're going to have to widen those roads.
We're definitely going over 100,000 next year.
Oh yeah.
Because
We might
so
hit
close
it this
year.
calendar year.
Yeah, we may.
We're arguably
Like
97-ish thousand people.
It's crazy.
So nobody likes that. I mean, nobody likes the idea of that. I'm 3 properties off of San Mateo. I'm not wild about it. But if you, and I had to do this with myself, because when it first hit me, I kind of went, and then I kind of talked myself off the ledge and said, okay, Barbara, if you had a property right on San Mateo, and I'll pick on San Mateo, all of the boulevards will face this at some point in the city. What's going to happen to the value of your home when it's now on a 4 or 5 lane road?
Right.
You're a realtor.
Yep.
What's going to happen?
Yeah, it's going to change.
The value conceivably could go down.
Yeah. Unless there's a creative way to utilize the property again.
Yes. So if someone bought a home or lived, and we'll see this happen on price, it will happen first on price. Someone might say, gee, I'd like to open a spa, and they'd convert their living room or whatever into a spa or a legal office or a CPA. Very low intensity businesses, wouldn't generate a whole lot of traffic. That will be the kind of soft evolution we'll see. And out in my area, I mean, although price is the widening, I've been assured multiple times this calendar year, we're going to start digging things up, and it's going to be a pain in the neck, but it'll be worth it. We'll start widening price. It probably isn't going to happen out east to San Mateo for 10 or 15 years. And if someone has a single family home on any of these roads, they can sell them as a single family home. There'll be nothing preventing them from doing that. But again, when you're on a 4 or 5 lane road and you have the opportunity to sell your property to a commercial endeavor, the chances are, no guarantees, but the chances are you could get more money selling your home as commercial than you could. You're the realtor. You tell me.
Well, it's kind of a creative way of looking at it, because there's limitations when you have it just set up as a single family home. And you're right, because I've had that conversation even with people who are going to live on Cranberry and Salford and even Price Boulevard.
Right.
Is that mixed use status is something. And I had a conversation with Robin about it the other day, and the mixed use status, that may be something that has to be addressed within the LDC as it moves along, so that there isn't, maybe some nightclub activity within the neighborhood area or something like that. But those are things that have to be looked at as it goes through.
Right.
We don't, and Robin and I just had an overview conversation about it. And while there's different points of view of that, I talked to somebody else about it over the weekend, and they're like, yeah, but where I lived, we had a neighborhood bar, we had those types of things. So it's kind of this soft, it's the soft side of what you're trying to do and introduce into the neighborhoods, because you still want the mom pop diners to be able to have
absolutely
come in and do certain things.
And this sort of soft commercial, we're not talking, 4-story office buildings or gas stations. We're really talking smaller footprint commercial development that blends a lot better into the surrounding areas. And people say all the time, well, why don't you do this stuff where there aren't any housing? I know
Our whole
everyone
city's kind of healthy.
has heard that we are a pre-platted community. So what does that mean? It means that general development carved up the whole city into little lots and sold them off
Yep.
to people. So it's virtually impossible to bring commercial anywhere in the city where we're not going to be next to or in the general proximity of a single family neighborhood.
Or where they don't already own. And so
Right.
a lot of places actually
Right.
already own the locations. So that causes a problem too, because
Right.
while we have property owner rights for single family homes and we have those plotted lands
Right.
already,
Right.
those businesses have already purchased a lot of these lands too, and those business owners have
Property rights.
property rights. So
Right.
it
Right.
is kind of this double-edged sword.
Yeah.
So word to the wise, I guess,
Right.
is
Right.
you better, as you're buying or selling, check your area. Make sure that the surrounding areas.
The voice
We
of
were dormant for so
experience.
long. Well, we were dormant
Right.
for so long.
Right.
People were, I think, used to not thinking that our boulevards were actually going to turn to boulevards.
Or not thinking that we would ever be
Sure.
250,000 people.
Right away.
Yeah.
We
And-
do have some questions.
Okay.
That is true. The ULDC, Robin,
Yeah.
San Vicente, thank you. The ULDC definitely needed to be updated
Mhm.
and streamlined. The format is much better.
Mhm.
Another comment, would you be willing to go back and amend some of the land uses and densities? Sorry about that. Densities. I'm going to shift the gears here a little bit so I can read a little better. Within the ULDC regarding Warm Oil Springs and so forth, some of those areas.
Absolutely. So yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There you go.
And Warm Mineral Springs in particular, I have such high hopes for Warm Mineral Springs. And we briefly had a discussion. There was a call for the commission to reduce the density in Warm Mineral Springs. I think we had it at high. Some people wanted it low. Some folks feeding back on the survey were okay with kind of medium. Forget the high, low, medium. I'd like to talk about what I envision there, and I'd love to get people's feedback on it. And I would say if any of my fellow commissioners are watching this, please Zoom off, because we will be revisiting the path forward for Warm Mineral Springs.
Sure.
When we get back from break in late September or early October. And I will say, and I'm not one to spend a lot of time looking backwards, but although I was supportive for a P3, I was very uncomfortable with the intensity. I did not like the condos at all. I just thought there was too much. So when I look at Warm Mineral Springs, my priorities fall this way. First and foremost, we have to bring water and sewer to that property. And I've got to say, I don't know. I don't understand why the folks who use the springs and live around there have allowed the city to get away with that for as long as we have. It is unconscionable to have septic in the same area as the springs.
Yep.
Priority number one, we've got to do that. We have $8.5 million of primarily surtax money and some park impact fees set aside for that purpose. That quote is a year or two old. I don't know what it's going to cost us right now to do that, but that's priority number one. Priority number two, the buildings. If we can find the money, and let me tell you, we've been trying to find the money to restore those buildings, I would be open to restoring two of them. I'm not open to restoring the building closest to the springs, because in the past, we had a spa there and a restaurant there. And all of the commissioners, and I'll just talk for myself, for hours we listened to public comment from the people who use those springs on a regular basis. And they said over and over and over, we don't need anything there. We need to protect the springs, preserve the springs, and give us easy access to the springs. I know sometimes we get accused of not listening. Believe me, that message got pounded on this marble head. And I'll fight like heck to put anything on that property other than just a welcome center, whether we restore the one that's there or replace it. It's going to be a money conversation for me. I know we've had a lot of people identifying potential pots of money. None of them are committed. Some of them the city has already pursued and been rejected. So that is a work in progress. We had a quote, again, an older quote, a year or two old, 18 million to restore all of those buildings. I suspect it's in the 20s now.
Or higher.
Or higher.
Yeah.
Today's dollars. But that's only a piece of it. Those buildings are in a floodplain. We have to ruggedize them, or whatever the language is. We would need to bring those buildings up to today's code in order to be insured.
Right.
And that's going to be probably even more money than any. So it's a money thing, gang. And it's a lot of money. And we have a lot of projects in this city that need to get done too.
We do.
So
We do.
oops, thunder.
Thunder. Hey, Chuck
We don't
English.
lose.
Chuck English says, good afternoon, Commissioner Langdon,
Mhm.
and you, John. How about that? Thanks, Chuck. Question: why did you vote to keep the P3 as part of the ULDC related to War Mill Springs Park? Is that it within the ULDC?
Well, no, it's not. It's not. What is still in the ULDC, and I mentioned it briefly, was the level of intensity. So for that activity center, and Warm Mineral Springs is an activity center, that 80 acres, we kept the high intensity. And I'm all for lowering the intensity there. I was never 100% comfortable with that level of activity in that location. But to do it in the absence of a properly noticed public meeting where the commissioners get to talk to the community and one another about a path forward for that property, it just didn't make any sense to me. So I'll put it on the record. I'm all for a less intense use in that area. And so I kind of talked about the 23 acres and what I saw happening there, which is nothing much outside of infrastructure.
Right.
I've also started a conversation with some of my cohorts in the county about the septic systems north of
they need
the
to be
springs,
addressed
because the Myahatchee Creek and the slough comes right down through there. That's another thing that amazes me, why there's no uproar or concern about those septic systems. A lot of those homes are old. We don't have a testing program. They're expensive. No one's, really had a head of steam to do that. I think we might.
And most of those are county. Most of those are county.
It's all county.
Yeah.
North.
Yeah.
I mean, it's city
pretty much
east.
Yep.
Yeah. And so
we need county involvement in that.
We do need county involvement in that, and we probably need state involvement.
I know for a fact that the state is actually taking over a lot of the septic control now, because they are regulating the septics near waterways.
Right.
A lot different than they did.
They're
going with
different types.
Well, they have to go with the aeration system. I was talking with Elrod Septic, who is a really favorite of mine, but he was the traditional septic tank, and now he's gone to the aeration system because that is what is being pushed into a lot of these low-lying areas, the flood zone areas, and the areas around waterways. So it's a different style system that will prevent spillage.
Right. And in
go ahead.
terms of what we would bring to Warm Mineral Springs, I'll support a very robust system maybe there's an opportunity to take, oh, I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
Um,
Just
we'll ignore it.
we'll ignore it.
Um,
We'll dance to it, but we'll ignore it.
So maybe, and we've not had this discussion, maybe we would have the opportunity to bring public sewer north.
Yeah.
I mean, so we should think ahead and think beyond all of that, and perhaps even down Ortiz. So that's my vision for the 23 acres, is something very, very simple. We're required by the public health department to put in flushable toilets.
Yep.
The fact that we've gotten away with porta-toities
Yeah.
for as long
It's crazy, isn't it?
as we have, I don't get it, but I'm not going to say anything, because we will address it. And there will be showers, probably the outside variety. No designs have come in yet. We're not at that point in the process.
We're still as far as like the Warm Spring side of things, we're still waiting on staff to come back with numbers, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and that should be hopefully September, October.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So, and I specifically asked for the numbers, not just the restoring of the buildings, but the ruggedizing.
Right.
What did we have to do to bring those buildings up to code? What would it cost so that we can get insured? So let's talk about the 60 acres.
Sure. Go ahead.
Was there a question?
No, but I will say that if you're a listening audience on Facebook and you have questions, as you can see, Chuck English has jumped in there,
Yeah.
and Raman Sambincite. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them.
Right.
And I will definitely ask.
Yeah.
We do have some more, but go ahead and
Right.
talk about the
And I would
the
just
land.
say one more thought on the 23 acres. I think we should continue to beautify that property. And I could envision yoga and Tai Chi classes going
Yep.
on, on the other side of the spring. So enriching the property in that kind of way. So now let's talk about the 60 acres that have been such a bone of contention.
Sure.
All along, in my heart of hearts, what I wanted to see there was a holistic or alternative health destination. That was always my dream for that area. The spa and the restaurant that used to be on the 23 acres.
Yep.
No. For the 23 acres, I would move that to the 60 acres because, number one, it's away from the springs. It would be, I always have to do this, southeast of the springs and away from that flow. We did do the geological studies, and construction can be supported there. So those things definitely. I would also love to see a holistic health center where people could come and get Reiki and the little needles, acupuncture,
Sure.
and those kinds of healthcare treatment. And they tend to be more Eastern European kinds of things that are that have
more
been
wellness
taking
driven.
off. Wellness driven,
Yeah.
absolutely. And two other things I would want to see somewhere. One is I'd love to have Selby Gardens come down and do something wonderfully botanical on that 60 acres. I mean, that's
Sure.
a
It's a beautiful
lot of
piece
acres.
anyway.
Yeah, and something that people could walk through. Whenever I have out of town visitors, I'm either hiking up to Sarasota to see Selby, or I'm going down to Naples for their botanical gardens. I want something here in Northport for all of the citizens of this city to enjoy. Priority number one. Priority number two, and let's attract some of those tourism dollars that are coming to Sarasota County already. Have them come here. We're talking to the Legacy Trail people.
I was going to bring that up.
To bring a path in. We did delay a decision on that, we being the commission. We desperately want to do that. We want bikers and joggers and whomever else would be coming down the Legacy Trail to have a positive experience when they get to Warm Mineral Springs. It is not a positive experience today. Let's be honest.
It is not.
So all of those wonderful things need to happen. I had the the honor and the pleasure to walk those 60 acres with Barbara Lockhart and Edie Dreest. And I think his name was Ted from Florida at Fish and Wildlife. And we walked that property. The immediate goal of that walk was to see if there was any scrub jay habitat on that property, because Florida Fish and Wildlife has a program. Well, they will restore scrub jay habitat, maintain it for a period of time, 3 or 5 years, and then it would revert to the local community to take care of. So we walked that property for a couple of hours. I've got to tell you, folks, it's a dumping ground and a homeless encampment today.
Yeah,
That's what we
it
have
is.
on the 60 acres. So it's easy to get all romantic about it. There's nothing romantic about that property. It's a danger. It's a health danger. And it's such a waste of beautiful property. So we did find habitat when we walked sort of in and headed north. And it was in sort of northwest. So it was sort of above the springs, not directly, but straddled. And Ted's comment was, it would be, he said, this could have been habitat. The trick with habitat, it has to be maintained, because once the things get overgrown, the scrub jays like low trees and the scrubby pines and all of that, he said it would be a major investment to restore that property. So I pressed him. I said, but you have a program
Right.
to do that. Would you guys be willing to work with the city to restore this parcel? It was a good sized parcel. And he repeated, it would be a major investment
Okay.
to do that. So he sidestepped
Well,
the question.
I have a question though, and I'm going to get to some other questions here
Mhm.
too. with the homeless population being back there on that acreage,
Right.
doesn't that cause harm to the natural environment?
Oh,
That
it does.
that are we doing anything about that?
Not really. I mean, our hot team engages with all of the homeless encampments around the city, and they're always trying to help those individuals. If some of them qualify for SSDI or Social Security or whatever, they try to help those folks. If they catch any of them who are at a point in their experience where they really want to change their trajectory, they'll work with that person to find transitional housing. We don't have a facility like that
We
in
don't.
the city. We are working with a nonprofit agency. I don't want we being city staff. I
Sure.
should be specific.
Yeah.
City staff is working with a nonprofit agency to bring transitional housing to the city. And those conversations are ongoing. There is another affordable with a capital A, housing development planned for the Pan American area. But when you look at that 60 acres, the dumping that you'll see there, part of it is clearly massive illegal dumping, furniture and mattresses and bags of trash. And then there are smaller piles, which is the personal product cast off of the homeless encampments. So we had to pick our way through. I mean, there was no path. I mean, there were some paths that were probably made by the homeless going
Right.
in and out of that property. No groomed paths or anything like that. And we had to keep rerouting because of dump sites and all of that other stuff. Clearing that property is going to be a major effort. We're going to need to do it. Hopefully we'll have some businesses that want to go in there that will clear their areas. And we'll have to do it bit by bit. It's not going to be easy. It's
So
going to be
what
expensive.
is theirs actually could be damaging to
The environment?
the environment and
Right.
the waterway.
Yes.
And so
Yeah, I mean, it's
kind of
Yeah.
a touchy conversation
it's
when we're
tough.
talking about the springs overall and the health of the springs.
right.
So
Right.
do you find that is, and I'm going to come back to your questions. I do see them posted there, but
Yeah.
do you find that to be a topic that maybe you as a commissioner are going to have to start addressing as far as going in and cleaning some of that stuff up because it does affect the springs?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We've already gone through and marked gopher tortoise. We did
Mhm.
that environmental study, and we believe that most, if not all, of the active and inactive gopher tortoise burrows have been marked. So that will complicate the cleaning up of that property. Our natural resources folks will have to go in there with our environmental folks and identify what things stay and what trees and things need to go. For example, a lot of people have spoken to me about the lovely pines, and there's an area where there's a whole stand of fairly tall pine trees, and in the wind they kind of whisper and moan. Well, I learned in walking through that property that those are not native trees, and they're destructive to a lot of flowers and other kinds of things that are on the endangered list for flora. So it will take some really smart people to go in there and help guide the cleaning up efforts of that property. It will be a major undertaking.
So I'm going to, I think we're going to go back here just a tad bit.
Right.
It's just a matter of re-examining the allowable uses, and that was about the ULDC and kind of cleaning that
Right,
up.
right.
And
I suspect, and I'm guessing, but just based on conversations that the commission has had in the past about the springs, I suspect there would be a lot of support for lowering the intensity. But again, the city owns that property. So, regardless of what the intensity is, we can always opt for less. So, we're not in the same position as we're in when there's a private piece of property and the developer, the property owner, wants to do something on that property that is consistent with the current ULDC. We all might not like it, but we legally can't say no. Now, to be really clear, we could say no, and then we'd be in court potentially fighting a case using taxpayer money, fighting a case that we can't win.
right.
Because the law is not behind us. So again, with Warm Mineral Springs, we have more control of that because we are the property owners.
You're right. So quick question from Chuck.
Yeah.
Chuck English. Question, Barbara. Do you support public comment preceding commission discussion of an agenda item or of agenda items?
Yeah, I do.
Why?
That was easy.
Why?
Why? Because our residents, folks who live here have strong feelings about some things. And I think they should have the opportunity to talk into the record how they feel about things. And again, I know a lot of times we get accused of not listening. And I try to point out to people listening and agreeing are two different things. And we always, as commissioners, have to be aware of the fact that the folks who come to make public comment, while very involved and passionate, and I applaud that, they may or may not represent the will of the larger community. We have 97,000 people. And I consider it my job, and I suspect the other commissioners do, it's my job to reach out to as many of those people as I can to understand what they want and need and to represent the will of the community.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yep. Another comment by Robin Sanvicente. Thank you, Barbara, for your views on the springs and the in-depth commentary. Uh, that that is the whole point of nature-based ecotourism.
Yes.
And then another one,
Yes.
other counties have established cleanup and restoration funds. And that would be talking about the homeless encampments and
Right.
and the debris that's back there currently. What are we doing to address some of the dumping that's happening back there now?
Well,
That's illegal.
right.
Let's not. I'm going to leave the homeless camps alone for a little bit. Kind of
That's going
switch
to be a
over.
very,
That's a
very
tough one.
sensitive
Yeah.
issue. And there have recently been some statutes passed at the state level that we need to approach that in a certain kind of way. So when the time comes to do that, we'll do it in a lawful way.
Do you think, and I'm going to, since we stayed there for a second,
Okay.
do you think that the state at some point would help with funding to help transition at some point some of these people that are there?
I would hope so.
I mean,
really
there's a
would hope
push all
so.
over the country right now for it, and
Yeah.
kind of cleaning up. We don't have, and I say this very cautiously, we don't have what some of the other cities have as far as the homeless encampments, but we also have them hidden, so people don't see them.
We have more.
Yeah, we have. I think we
I'll
have.
tell you,
Yeah.
I don't have data,
Yeah.
but my gut tells me we have more actually homeless people in the 104 square acres that's Northport than a lot of the other communities. But John's right on, because we still have so much undeveloped properties. They're hidden. They're
Yeah.
not out in the park, out in front of the library,
Well, I know when
like
we did
they are in the city of
when we did
Sarasota.
the undercutting on 41 across the street
Oh,
from
yeah.
the Budget Inn,
Right.
and we
Right.
we moved a whole encampment full of people
Right.
off of the waterway there, Cocoa Plum.
One of our water sources,
Yeah.
FYI.
Yes, it was. So, there's
Yeah.
nothing like moving those people on.
Yeah.
And
These guys, these are difficult topics. None of this is easy. It's tough, and not everybody's going to be happy with the way we proceed. I just hope at some point people at least have heard and understand the why. That they might not agree or want it, but at least understand where we're coming from and what we're trying to achieve, and what outcomes we want. We want a beautiful city that everyone wants to work in and live in and play in. And I really have to applaud our environmentally conscious folks, because those are the folks, I mean, it's Robin and Chuck. They are engaged all the time. And I have such respect for that. But I've got to tell you, when I roam around the community and I talk to different groups and Rotaries and networking groups and neighborhood groups and all of that, people are crying for more things to do in the city.
I was going to say more substance.
Yeah, more stuff in the city.
Yeah.
They want, I'll speak for myself. I'm very grateful that Punta Gorda has so many free, almost free. I'm going to have to deal with this phone.
Yep.
Excuse me.
That's all right.
Sorry.
I will say this. I was up in, we were in Muncie, Indiana. And while the park system up there is nice,
Sorry.
I'm going to go back to a little bit of what we're talking about, which is
Right.
our parks. And I'm kind of getting pushed off of the Wormrole Springs overview as it is, but
Mhm.
I've got my granddaughters up in Muncie, Indiana, and I started a game that we played here. Believe it or not, I played with Ellie and did some things when they were on vacation,
Yeah.
and we called it park hunting.
Ooh.
And so we have a great book. We've got great parks. They're clean.
Mhm.
We've got the app that we use to keep them that way. But you go to other communities and, Muncie, Indiana, while it's a cool little town, man, they're they're really missing the boat when it comes to the environment and embracing the park systems like we have here. So
Right.
I know that a lot of our community feels blessed.
Mhm.
I want to highlight that a little bit to say that we need to appreciate it more than ever,
Right.
that we're paying attention to this
Right.
stuff.
Right.
Because when you go to other
Mhm.
communities, while their denseness and their trees are still there, their park systems are waning with engagement to the citizens. And we kind of have both. We have the engagement to the
Right.
parks
Right.
and the wilderness attached, and the wildlife still there.
Right.
And there's something to be said about keeping and maintaining that. And we're 34%. Not that we're going to stop there, but the city overall land mass is 34%
Of open space.
of open space and parks.
Conservation.
Yeah, and
parks.
constant. Yeah. So when you look at it through the lens of that, and you look at it as a pathway to continue it,
Right.
I don't think anybody's trying to say stop, but
No.
man, we are. When I visit places with my granddaughters now, it's an eye-opening experience, and it's just not for me. It's even the parents that are there, when I tell them about how blessed we are to have our parks here, where they were before in Cuyahoga Falls and the surrounding areas there that embrace those areas, the park systems. And then when you go to Muncie, Indiana, it's just a different way of life, a different format all the way through. But it's like, man, you really appreciate coming home.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. So
we have beautiful parks.
We do.
And our staff, our Parks and Rec team, I'd put them up against any other municipalities' Parks and Rec team. They're awesome.
So
go
ahead.
A couple of things just,
Sure.
and hi, Kathleen. A couple of things happening that have me really excited. Our Parks and Rec team is putting together a parks master plan for the second half of the city east of Toledo Blade. We have one park, Atwater, which is one boulevard east of where I live. It's a beautiful park. There are playing fields, there's picnic areas, there's a splash pad, beautiful, lots of trees, beautiful. But that's it. And we have 30 parks west of Toledo Blade. So I've been talking about that a lot, as we've talked about it at commission. And Parks and Rec is, as we speak, working on a master plan. So what kind of parks do we need? Where should they be located? I suggested that we pay attention to where the county schools owns property. Because there's been some interest in building a community center out east. I would be wildly supportive of like the Morgan Center model. The Morgan Center is right on the same campus as the high school, and I think it's the Heron Creek Middle School. Heron Creek Middle School. And so that facility really supports the kids, and they have great programming for kids. But I think we need to get smart as a city how we do things. So there's what we want to do, and then there's how we do them. We could contract with a nonprofit that provides after school and teen intervention programs and have them run it and pay for it.
Absolutely.
So we need to think about all of that. Okay, questions?
So I do, but we're going to go over today.
Oh, I'll stay.
Just a tad bit, because we just chewed up about 55 minutes on the air already. And I want to continue to go because we do have some more comments there, and I want to address them because they're good comments. And I'm going to keep Kathleen's up here in a second, but this is John Rawlings with Real Talk Radio saying thanks for listening in. Please join us on Friday and join us tonight. It is the Heron Creek Forum, Northport Forward. We've got the not debate, but the candidate forum tomorrow night will be live on the air and at Shannon Staub Library. You can also reserve your seats there. We've got Bobcat Blitz on Wednesday at 6 o'clock. And then 6 o'clock on Thursday,
Up in the estates.
up in the
American
estates,
Legion.
American
Post
Legion.
254.
Absolutely, we're
I'll
doing
be there or be
be,
square.
be there, be square. We've got another Northport Ford event.
Right.
Mentioned that at the beginning.
Mhm.
And then my show again on Friday at 3 o'clock.
You're a busy
And
guy.
and then I'll work in between. But then I'm going back to Indiana. So you guys have a blessed afternoon. We're going to stay on Facebook and continue. And so I've got Kathleen's question up. She says, "Hi Barbara, do you have any idea if the city can order repairs to the Willow Creek apartments? I, for one, would love would have you fence off Warm Willow Springs to keep it as a holy place, similar to Little Salt Springs."
Okay, 2 questions there.
Yep.
So Willow Creek Apartments. I got involved shortly after Ian with the Willow Creek Apartments because there were some non-functioning elevators and there were some disabled residents on the upper floors. And so I was involved with some nonprofits in the city and our social services division to bring supplies into that community and to drop them off on all the floors so that people had water and food
Yep.
and some basic hygiene supplies. I discovered at that time that the city does not have jurisdiction. It's a private community. It's privately owned, and we can't order repairs. Now, we can and did have conversations with the owners and the maintenance people and the leasing office of Willow Creek. And I understand that at least at that, we're talking, a year and a half ago now, more, that some repairs were made. But right after Ian, we were still suffering some of the impacts of COVID and the supply chain disruptions. One of the elevators we had in City Hall was broken, and we waited a while for those parts. So I don't have a happy solution for that. As long as there are no code violations, the city is really limited. Again, we can talk to people and encourage, and if there are code violations, we can move on those. But it is a privately owned and managed facility. In terms of fencing Warm Mineral Springs, we have fenced it.
Mm-hmm.
You can only get in through the little entranceway. In terms of...
Well, that's a safety thing too, right?
It's a safety thing, yes. In terms of restoring it like Little Salt Springs. So for anyone listening who might not be familiar, Little Salt Springs, that property is owned by the University of Miami. It is used for educational purposes only. It has never been exploited. It has never been privately owned, to my knowledge. It has always been protected. It is pristine. Mr. Koslow, who just retired, I understand, was the county's anthropologist, took me on a tour of Little Salt Springs. And Little Salt Springs needs to remain exactly the way it is. But in all candor, Warm Mineral Springs, that cow has left the barn. I mean, it was privately owned for decades.
Yeah.
And I respect the fact that it was a burial place and that some of our indigenous people look at it as a holy place. I've done a lot of research on the springs. And when it was privately owned, the springs was exploited. There's really no other way to describe it. Divers went in there and took artifacts out. I found a picture online of a diver holding a human skull that he then took home with him. Divers from the University of Miami also dove there, removed artifacts, but at least they're with the University of Miami and have been protected. Oh, thank you. Koski.
Yeah.
Steve Koski. I'm sorry. It was a while ago.
Costco. Costlow.
Costlow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Robin.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So it's, I did ask Mr. Costlow when I was getting my tour of Little Salt Springs, because he also dove Warm Mineral Springs. I said, in all honesty, Steve, is there anything left there? And he said, probably not. It's been pretty stripped. So it's unfortunate. But
Oh, she said Koski.
No,
Koski.
Koski.
Koski. Koski.
Koski.
Not
sorry.
Costlow. Not Koski.
I thought it was Costlow.
Yeah.
Okay, Koski. So I think at this point, the priorities for Warm Mineral Springs is that we protect it. A lot of public commenters talked about preserving it. I would be very careful with that word, because when I hear preserve, I hear a fence around that lake and no one goes in.
Right.
That's what preserve means to me. So for me, we need to protect it. We need to get water and sewer in there and get it off septic and well, and begin addressing some of the surrounding areas. I also have a concern with the intensity of use of the springs. I've really, I'm reluctant to touch that, but we have 200 or 300 people in the springs virtually every day, 8 hours a day.
And
we test it.
And they are there.
Safe.
They are using it.
They're using
it. They're and I'm going to say this, it'll get me in trouble, but it is a really small group that utilizes the spring, and it is that same group, but it is, there's a true value,
right,
that a lot of Americans are not adapting to, don't appreciate that the Europeans, they really do, because there's a true value in it. Anybody who understands the springs overall, or does any type of research into that, whether it is and I'm going to say this, whether it is a mental thing or not, the mental side of healing has more power than we give it credit.
Right.
So I'm a fan. I'm a fan of the springs. I'm a fan of why the Europeans are utilizing it. I've been through a lot of the trainings, some of the same thing that Robin has been through.
Right.
And I do appreciate the springs for what it is.
And I want to make a comment about that, because I have a nephew who lives with his family in Poland, and I really want to visit them in the next year or so, because they utilize a spring every year on their wedding anniversary. They go to this beautiful spring. However, bodies are not allowed in the spring. They pump the water into tubs, and then people soak in the mineral waters in the tubs. And they do that out of respect for the springs and to protect the purity of the water.
Right.
So I'm not suggesting that we do that at Warm Mineral Springs. I don't need the ceiling falling in on me.
An uproar would come.
But these are the kinds of things that we need to think about and talk about as a community.
Sure. I've got another comment. This was posted by Ginger Miranda, but this is Carmine. Can bars talk about the relationship between, let's see, can bars between the businesses that want.
To come here in the rezoning that makes that possible.
Oh, so
What's
go
the
back to the bars
relationship?
conversation. Go back to the bars in the neighborhoods. Is some of that rezoning part of that,
Well,
or can that? How can that?
would need to have a much more specific conversation.
Barbra. Okay,
Barbara.
so let me go back. Let me go back to it. Can Barbara, talk about the relationship between businesses that want to come here and the rezoning to make that possible? Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, one of the issues we always had as a city in attracting businesses here is that we had a lot of land, but very little of it was zoned for commercial use. And I'll use that term commercial in its broadest sense. It's retail, it's office, it's industrial, et cetera, et cetera. So in the real neighborhood, so with the rezoning, we need to look at exactly what type of commercial certain areas are being rezoned to. I use the phrase soft commercial. I think the final language for it was transitional corridor. I don't like it. That doesn't talk to me. But soft commercial, a bar, a drinking establishment, lounge is not a permitted use in that zoned area. That kind of stuff would be in commercial, and I think also in industrial. I mean, anyone who's looked at the ULC, there are pages of charts that go through all of the land uses. I can't store that all here. I always have to refer to the document, but from the best of my memory, you would have to be in a corridor and or industrial setting to have a bar lounge kind of thing. Now you could have a restaurant with a bar, but I took the question to be really more of a, is it the white elephant or the pink elephant? White elephant. Out in the Englewood area. That's
Rotunda.
Yeah. That's a bar.
Oh, you're talking about the bar, White Elephant. Yeah, I was talking about the White
Englewood Beach.
Yeah.
Right by Englewood.
White Elephant.
Yeah.
100%.
So there are 4 flavors. There are 2 flavors of sort of commercial and 2 flavors of industrial. So we'd really have to talk more specifically about what area. Most of the industrial is east of Toledo Blade. There's a little bit around Toledo Blade.
Mm-hmm.
Keep in mind, folks, that Toledo Blade was always designed and thought to be our industrial area of the city, our commercial area of the city.
So along those same lines, does the business have requirements like density and income level?
Income level. That would be a housing question. Yes, not so much a business question. Could you rephrase that, whoever asked that
would
question?
be Carmine.
Yeah, if you could.
And I'll come back to that. But
get more details
something that Robin put up was about the land. The percentage you are quoting incorporates hammock,
orange hammock, the state forest.
Certainly, but as it should because it's in this. I have that discussion a lot because everybody wants to exclude that from the total. But
that's
sorry, it's our land use and it's within.
But a comment on that, and when it comes to parks, one of the conversations I've been having in my one-on-ones with staff, and I think we've had some conversations on the dais, is ecotourism. For me, ecotourism is sort of parks for adults.
Sure, it is.
And when it comes to the orange hammock, I learned fairly recently that hunters use the orange hammock fairly regularly, and some of our equestrian residents ride.
They do a lot
in the orange hammock. Why can't the city have a conversation with the owners of that property and what can we do to make that a more official ecotourism area? I mean, clearly there's the watershed area and the water areas that need to be protected, absolutely nothing around them. But there's 300 or 400 acres of what I would call sort of prairie land. I'm sure it's not accurate, but it's fairly flat and grassy, and some areas have trees and that kind of thing. Why couldn't we formalize that use, have hiking trails, have more control over it, maybe a state park? I'm a big hiker and walker, and so I've done a number of trails in the forest here in Northport. It is wonderful. Did a wonderful hike and had a picnic right out by the river. There are some camping areas, very limited, some tenting areas and picnic areas right out by the river. It's lovely. We need to do more of that. And I think as a city, we need to embrace what other organizations are doing and sort of promote it as part of our own. I think we've had a little bit of a tendency in the past that if we weren't the ones actually doing it and paying for it, that anything else didn't count. And we need to stop that kind of thinking. You know, we have a lot of environmental area, a lot of it in the county, you know, north of the estates. Let's work with the county and see what we can do from an ecotourism point of view in those areas. When we were talking about the development in that northeast quadrant of Tropicare and 75, several of the public commenters talked about their concern about being able to get their horses out there if development happened in that quadrant. And I really heard that, and I'm going to be looking for, and when we had the conversation, when we were sort of talking about one of those projects, I made the comment from the dais that I would be looking for, when the design plans came back, safe passage for the horses through that property to be able to get to Orange Hammock. So I think we need, and that can certainly be done. Some of those public commenters talked about the fact that they would have preferred to see in that northeast quadrant maybe some stables and some trails and that kind of thing. We have all that land in the county directly north of our estate area. Why can't we work with the county and collaborate on some ecotourism kinds of things?
Have we ever
in those
stirred that
areas?
conversation up?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I can't say that no one has ever had that conversation. I certainly haven't, and I haven't been privy to one on the dais.
So I've got the comment. Elena talked about businesses needing certain income levels
Oh, I get
and
it.
people density
Okay. Okay. Yes. Thank
for
you.
the frequent.
Thank you. So I've gotten a lot of comments as I've traveled around the city from people saying, why couldn't we get a Texas Roadhouse here? Why can't
Right.
we get some of those higher end chains, or even better yet, chef owned, unique kinds of restaurants in Northport? And I don't know about the chef owned, but you know, when it comes to some of those other restaurants, it's not enough that we have 97,000 residents, or even that we tip 100,000. We're pre-platted as quarter acre family lots, and we're spread out on 104 square acres. And how a lot of these businesses measure themselves, they look at a potential site, and it varies for all of them, but they'll look at a certain mile radius around that property, and they want a certain population density in that area, or they're not interested. So when we have about 7 different projects swirling around the Toledo Blade corridor, most of them are mixed use, so some combination of higher density housing, retail, shops, restaurants. Two of them have the potential of a gathering area. And again, I always kind of think of Lashley Park and Punta Gorda. That's not a very big park, and yet they support a lot of great music and food and other kinds of events. Two of those projects have the capability of having those kinds of areas as part of the design. And so, although a lot of people are uncomfortable with the higher density housing going in, let's say on Toledo Blade,
Yep.
Toledo Blade's a 4-lane road. If it's going to go anywhere, that's where it belongs.
Absolutely.
And that kind of density is going to help us attract those restaurants that need to see that in their business models before they make a commitment to a site. Another thing that hurts us a little bit, I get a lot of questions, we're going to get a Trader Joe's here. Can we get a Detweiler's here? And I don't think it's a huge secret. We have a couple of developers really talking at depth with Detweiler's. City's very involved in those conversations because it is not in Detweiler's business model to build. If you think about where they're located, they move into, for the most part, abandoned properties and strip malls.
Yep, they sure do.
They don't build. And so another issue with businesses coming to Northport is if you're going to come to Northport, 99 times out of 100, you're going to have to build.
We don't have a lot of old.
We don't. So we have to overcome those kinds of things.
We do.
And we are. I mean, we have really turned a corner. And
in 5 to 10 years, some of our strip malls are going to be 15 years old.
Yeah, Coca Plum.
Yeah, Coca
our only strip mall.
I know. Well, we have some other strip
malls.
We do.
We
do.
Yeah.
So it's, all these things are going to transition over time. But unfortunately for us, we're a young city who didn't have a lot of the older built buildings. And the ones that we do have, believe it or not, there is some activity going on at Winn-Dixie's old location, and I know that there was
happening there.
I have no idea.
Number of things.
I think they're just cleaning it up because
still.
Well, I think it was still damaged. It was still damaged from Ian.
Yeah,
so
that and the old Sun building.
Yeah, I think those. Well, the Sun building is for sale.
Yeah.
I've been inside of it, and it's in good shape. It just needs the right person to come along and buy it up. So. I've got one last comment. We're at the 423 mark, which is pretty cool. Yeah. Robin St. Vincent Day, thank you. This broadcast has been really great, and I appreciate the in-depth and pleasant responses to the citizens' questions. Thank you, John and Commissioner Langdon.
Thank you, Robin. I give our environmentally sensitive folks a lot of credit. They show up, they engage, and they do influence. They really do influence. I mean, I can honestly say my thoughts about Warm Mineral Springs, the whole thing, have changed. And a lot of that has been the result of all of the public comment over the past year and a half about that property. So, and
there's some good and in traveling, I will tell you that going all over the place and seeing my granddaughters and knowing what a good time I had with them in our park systems, we have really a lot to be proud of. And I say it all the time. We've got a lot of greatness within our city. We've got to keep doing it. We've got to embrace the growth.
Yeah.
But we don't have to look the other way.
And the hospitals
coming
and all the jobs those hospitals are going to bring. On the one hand, Sarasota Memorial Hospital has 2 potential sites to build hospitals here in Northport. They're nonprofit. They're not going to pay taxes. But when I talk about economic development, it's just not about the taxes. It's about the jobs.
It is.
That's my primary motivation in wanting to attract more business here, is so that our workforce doesn't have to drive 15, 20, 25, 50 miles to go to work. They can live, play, and work here in the city.
Wow. And we'll end with this. Kathleen, what do you take in your coffee, Barbara? ? See you at early voting.
Yeah, I wasn't
So
there
we really didn't even
today.
talk about, we really didn't even
No.
talk about reelection.
I
We
was
just talked
there
about
this weekend. but
stuff. So this was, and
Yeah.
really we did that for a purpose
Yeah.
because this was Barbara's cycle. We
Right,
have a
right.
commissioner on each month. We are going to continue to do that, or I'm going to continue to do that. And we really just wanted to get the conversation of the commission and points of views out.
Yeah. And things
so
that there are
they matter.
wonderful things happening
Yeah.
in the city.
Yep.
And sometimes we get so bogged down in what might happen as a result of that,
Absolutely.
that we kind of lose sight of the planning that's going into it and the development, the design requirements. I mean, our ULDC has amped up the design requirements of mixed use and commercial development because we know that they're going to be in the general proximity of single family home neighborhoods. And we've made that really strict. I'll tell you, I mean, I'm very connected to the business community, and that includes developers. I had one developer talk to me about, gee, you know, you're making it really hard and people are going to build somewhere else. And I said, look, we are very sensitive to the fact that in this rezoning, wherever we put commercial development, because of the way general development cut us up, we're going to butt up against neighborhoods of single family homes. And it's always a balance. We need to do things to buffer that kind of development where it's going to bump into those neighborhoods. And I'm not afraid to tell a developer that, you know.
Yep, I agree.
We need to continue to be a beautiful place so that people want to live here and businesses want to be here.
But I'm going to add something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care who the commissioners are currently or who they will be in November. A lot of these projects that are going up that people are really upset about were done decades ago. They were approved decades.
Yep.
And people need to come to grips that this current commission, while on some of the issues that you may have, you can't lay claim that this commission did these, and not even the staff that's currently here and trying to explain it. I listened to Elena stand up and explain that one night and at the Northport Forward event.
Right.
And it was very educational because the property owners who put the plan together 10, 12 years ago, they had the stamp of approval of 10 or 12 year ago standards.
20 years ago.
And 20 years ago. And so you have to keep in mind as the city is developing, if it's not new in the regard that it was freshly voted upon or approved within the ULDC, they have to go back and apply the old rules. And so I really loved the fact that Elena explained it the way she did, because it really highlighted the negative impact from today's people representation. It put the onus where it should have been. And it was approved a long time ago. And that's what the problem was a long time ago. And we don't want those same issues to resolve today.
And in all honesty, it's a proliferation of single family homes on quarter-acre lots that poses the most immediate environmental threat. We don't have to mitigate our properties. Our properties are elevated. They're designed so that the water flows to the street and not in our houses. That's why our streets flood. It's by design.
It is.
And when we have large residential subdivisions or commercial property, we have way more controls on what they have to do from an infrastructure point of view or from a landscaping and a buffering point of view. And it's kinder to the land. There's not as much coverage of the land as there is on those single family home lots. I live out east. I'm seeing it happen in my neighborhood, and there are no trees left.
No.
Very few.
You know, there's renourishment programs coming.
There are.
Yeah, there are. So,
There are.
you know, it's been great talking.
Yes.
We're sitting at 4:30. We've
Oh my
got
gosh.
an event at 6. So thank you everyone for listening
Thank
in.
you. Thanks
Please,
for having me,
please,
John.
yeah, you're more than welcome. And you know, we're next month. I didn't check to see who it is, but I'll get the information out as quickly as I can.
Right.
And I think it might be Pete. I want to think it's Pete because I know it's not. I know it's not Debbie. I think Debbie is. I actually believe Debbie is October, like October, November.
I know she wanted to have one before
Exit.
she turned.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it was she had to exit.
Yeah.
So the I look forward to more shows about the city, and I'm glad that you guys were part of this today.
Yeah.
Chuck's comment will be the last one.
Okay.
Too big a house and too small of a lot is a major issue with flooding.
Well,
that's not true, but
well,
it kind of can
no,
be.
Chuck really does have a point, because the single family homes are designed, that elevation is designed so that the water runs away from the house and into the street.
Yeah.
Single family homes don't have to mitigate their water. The large commercial developments have to mitigate the water so it stays on site. That's why you see the retention ponds and blah, blah, blah.
Our runoff is our streets.
Right.
It really is our streets. It's designed that way.
Right.
So
I get it, Chuck. You have an excellent point.
It's a good point, but it's not going to change.
Sometimes people say, well, why can't you stop that building? Chuck, I would want you to go with me to a property owner who has a single family lot in a community that's zoned R1 and explain to them why they can't build and why they shouldn't sue us.
Right.
Because we don't let them build.
And they'll come after you too.
They would. Absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for being part of it. Look forward to having many more conversations.
Yeah.
Y'all have a good night. And it's nice to be back home in Northport.
Yes, it is.
But I do want to go back and give Ellie Rose and Evie T, my granddaughter, some hugs. Yeah. So I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Thank you.